The Broken Brain is selecting one charity per month, local charities in particular, to highlight and ask you to check it out. And for the month of June, we are celebrating Out Nebraska, built around empowering and celebrating LGBTQA plus communities in Nebraska, specifically looking at helping out with laws that are supportive of queer people and against laws that are anti-LGBTQA. They also do community education and awareness and trying to make Nebraska a better and safer place for people. You can go to outnebraska.org/about-us, see if you can get involved. They have volunteer opportunities for those that are local, and also, of course, donations. And I encourage you to check it out. Anybody who joins our Patreon in this month of June, 50% of your donation will be directed towards helping out Nebraska through donations from June until the end of 2024. And we're going to be doing that with every charity that we highlight each month. So get involved in your community, get involved with LGBTQA issues, and enjoy today's show. The Broken
Brain. Recording in progress.
Hello, everybody out there. Halo is what I said, but hello is what I meant. And welcome back to The Broken Brain this week for your dive into psychology and culture. And today we're going to be focused on some areas that have to do with things that are near and dear to my heart, which is addiction, something I work with quite a bit and talk about quite a lot and share with all of you out there quite a lot. And if you've heard me talk about it ever before, you know that I believe very firmly that if you wonder, is addiction touching my life, then just assume it is, because if you have the luxury of being able to ask that question, you can still assume that it's out there somewhere and it's touching the lives of those that you care about or the lives of those they care about or right there, that it is something that's intertwined with our life, and we all owe it to ourselves and to just everyone around us to know more about it and more of how to help. And so we're going to talk about a really fascinating way of approaching helping with addiction through a process known as recovery high schools. And in order to talk about that today, I've been really excited to welcome Greg Wooley. He's an author, poet, recovery advocate, and just I'll let you talk about all the things you are. But welcome to The Broken Brain.
Thanks, Dwight. All the things I am. I'm so glad, and I am glad to be here with you. I get the blessing to be called co-founder and chairman of the board of Florida Recovery Schools of Central Florida, Freedom Springs High School. That's a mighty long name, and I'm just really, really, really grateful to have that position and to be able to help young people on the path to recovery. Because I was a very broken young person. I would have been a client, a student of ours, absolutely, because my addiction started pre-adolescence and was full blown by my teen years. So I was in a lot of trouble as a kid. As a person, I've been in recovery for 33 years now. As a person in long-term recovery, I think the system is designed to try to punish the problem away, and I think that doesn't work. I've been a 12-stepper like all my life pretty much now, and so with that model, you pretty much give it away as part of your recovery. And so I've done a lot of work with helping others along the way. A lot of work. I moved into Celebrate Recovery for about 10 years and did a lot of work through the church. And with that, they had people that were getting out of prison. And so I had the joy and I like working with hurting people to try to give them, because in my eyes, you can't really cry about them breaking into your house if you won't do anything to help them whenever they're getting out looking for help. So if no one helps them, we deserve the recidivism rate that we get, which I think is heartbreaking too, but that's probably a whole nother show.
I'm a big believer in that too. I've worked a lot with jail and prison diversion programs, they call them, for mental health and for addiction needs. And Boy, this would be a whole nother, there are a whole other programs and things out there. I worked with a nonprofit agency that worked with drug court for a long time. And
Sure.
for all of the ups and downs of the probation, parole, and court justice system, and some of those still show up in some of those programs. They're not perfect by any means. They're still very, very hard for people to get through. But just seeing how people respond when they are given something that's hard to do but possible to do, versus a no-win situation, which is we're going to punish you by taking away the major psychological coping skills that have become so destructive to your life, and then just tell you to get out there. And by the way, we're not going to let you have an easy way to get any new ones, because you can't get a job. Nobody, everybody's mad at you. And by the way, now you have this stigma of having been incarcerated. And so
I did a speech for Toastmasters 2 weeks ago called "We need to we need to disassemble the Department of Corrections and start a Department of Connections, because there's no correcting going on in corrections."
I like that. I like this. That's a good turn of phrase. I love a good turn of phrase, no matter whether, even if I don't agree with something, I still like a turn of phrase some of the time. But I really like that one because I agree with that very deeply. Having seen people, and you get into indigent circumstances of one kind or another, be it the criminal justice system, homelessness, addiction itself, even if you're able to avoid the criminal justice system and homelessness as part of that, just the stigma that goes along with certain things, even social stigma. And it's hard. It's harder than people might think to get out of a pattern like that. You can't just, you can just say, get over it, but it does. But then we get the results we get. Yeah.
Right. You can't do it by yourself either. So if you don't have that helping hand, it just won't happen.
Yeah.
But so back to the story is I did about 10 years working with guys getting out of prison, like on a weekly basis at least. I would spend my Saturdays doing step work with guys that were in a halfway house, and I was like, why isn't there something that whenever the guys are younger, why isn't there something that before we absolutely break them, like because I was 13, 14 years old, and I had my moments where I'm like, I'll never use again. I'll never drink again. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever, ever. And then put me back in with my peer group of choice, and I would do it again. And so after about 10 years in the church, I got some church hurts and decided to leave the church, and I was looking for something else to get involved in, some other way to give it away. And I was at a chamber of commerce of all things, because I also have a roofing company. And there was a woman there who said, and by the way, I have a passion for young people in recovery, and I would really like to bring a recovery high school into this area. And so that lit the light for me. There's a movie called Generation Found, and if you hadn't ever heard it before, it's on Prime. That kind of gives a look into what a recovery high school could look like, with an alternate peer group built around it and some other things. That it's the one out in Texas, and it's a really good example. Usually that's how people come in contact with trying to get a vision for what recovery schools could and would look like.
Had you ever heard of it before then? Before she mentioned it? Yeah.
I had not ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't until I'd heard you talk about it. Actually, yeah, that was the first I knew about the model.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, at that time, I had been sober for about 30 years. And I've been very, very active. I mean, here on the district level, the local level, and on the state level, and the anonymous programs. So, and not to hear about it seems weird, because to me, once I saw the model, I was like, because if you could have a little 20 person, one room schoolhouse here and there in different places, I mean, it just makes sense rather than do what we do. Because I think that if you don't connect young people that are struggling in those departments with other people that have overcome the problem, then it's still going to be the problem of putting them back in with their peer group of choice, and doing it all over again.
As a counselor, even just looking up and looking for support groups that whether they're community-based support groups or treatment groups, and of course there's all kinds of differences, but if you go and do a little Googling for addiction support groups, 12-step groups, therapist-run groups in your area, most people out there for adults. If you do that, you're going to find at least something. Even in areas where you're not going to find as much as you want, you usually find something. And I'm apologize to anybody out there who's doing that, and maybe that's another problem too, right? And if you're in an area that has like literally nothing, but generally speaking, you can at the very least find either an AA group or something just to go talk to some people, and you can even hop on a Zoom or online meetings for things that are community based, even if you can't find like a professional treatment center or whatever. But now we take that to youth, and having been someone who's worked with a lot of young clients. Right. There's oftentimes you find nothing at all, or if you do, it's the one game in town, and if it ain't good, then
Yeah, there's a 2017 study that said 180,000 teens went to treatment, and what do you do with those guys afterwards? It's crazy. So it's like you just threw all, and that doesn't say any of the ones that have been through juvenile justice and all the other stuff. 180,000 kids coming out with no support afterwards. It doesn't make any sense. It's like we're making, expecting the problem to happen.
It's a great point you make, and it's one that we're all too eager to put on the feet of people who make decisions that are self-destructive decisions and say, well, what did you expect? But then societally and as a group of people, as parents, as members of community, what do we expect too? And so we got to do something different. We want something different to happen. I totally agree with you, by the way, the reaction of saying like, wow, this exists. Why isn't it in every single school district? And so maybe let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of what that looks like. You already said smaller than average, like a small unit or a small classroom setting.
Right. Well, and the biggest ones are like 200 student big, which is still small for a high school, but generally they're 20 to 50 people schools. And for ours, though we call ourselves a high school, we use an online platform. So that means that it can be managed by a peer support person or a counselor. And if we ever get funding, we'll have to have a certified teacher in the room. And we've struggled with a lot of areas. We're still unfunded. We're a donation based, and we don't charge our kids. And so that brings its own long-term problems with it. So we're trying to figure a lot of that stuff out as we go. And so ours right now is we're virtual. We have the sister school in Tampa that does have a certified teacher and is fully funded, and they're doing some really cool stuff. I am very, very envious of what they're doing over there, and I'm hoping that next year or in sometime soon that we'll be able to model what they're doing. But they launched at the same time as us, but we launched virtually, and they had space donated to them, which in the beginning, that makes all the difference in the world, because if you're virtual, a lot of the state funders and everybody else doesn't even, want to talk to you.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a mixed bag, isn't it, of being able to provide a lot of outreach, and there's a lot of those advantages of being online, but then also the social advantages of having an actual physical space too for kids to actually come and interact.
Absolutely,
with peers.
I think that we've done a good job with what we have. I mean, we have 2 graduates and kids that have been sober about a year, and we've had the kids that passed their first drug test ever, and just get their job, get their first jobs, and a lot of celebration stuff where we try to celebrate them just showing up whenever they're supposed to. Absolutely. But we've had a lot of celebrations along the way. So
that's really cool. It's been well, let me ask this: kids getting into the school, how does that usually go about? Is this you just kind of let it be known and people try to self-identify and refer themselves in? Or
because we had been working on this. Our executive director stepped down recently, but she was very involved in the smoking cessation programs going on in the schools here. So, and that included marijuana. And so she was privy to all the kids in 3 different counties here, and mainly Orange, which is a big county. And so she was involved in the everyday affairs of the schools through another program that went in and did smoking cessations. And so she knew the problem up front and personal. So whenever we launched, of course, we didn't know COVID was coming along. Whenever we were first forming the nonprofit and doing all the first footwork for it, we had really good ties with Orange County, and we thought we were going to have donated space from Orange County, and it was just going to be a walk-in, right? We were just going to walk in, open up the doors, and they were gonna give us the kids they wanted us to work with, and everything was going to be easy. Then COVID come along, that connection got broke. Her husband got transferred to 3 counties away, and so we decided to launch virtually because we were still struggling with finding a place now whenever all that happened. And plus everything was kind of virtual then anyhow. And
yeah, we certainly discovered how possible it was to be virtual. I think one of the things that comes out of tragedy is oftentimes a testament to human ingenuity. But when it was amazing how many things we knew for sure could never happen and would never cross our mind that we then within a couple of weeks had to start doing, and educating people online had been. It's not like it was brand new, but it certainly wasn't being done on that scale. And so, yeah, it's props to you guys to continue in that way and being able to adapt, because just think of how much it means for that to be available. But when we get a real bump in the road when you're headed to, here's a goal, it should be doable. We got, of course, why wouldn't the schools help? Why, and so now it's still in that mode where it's now functional and you got people going through it. Yeah. It's pretty exciting. Does it now with the recovery school? Does it get any sort of? You mentioned that it's completely donor funded at this point. Is it something? Do people ever do this as kind of like a charter school, kind of like where?
Yeah, there are different funding? Models. There's private school model, charter school model, and then actually models that are put on by the public schools as well. So there's generally three different models, and we're private, and if you get to the point where you can bring in that certified teacher and stuff like that, you can scholarship and get scholarships for the kids then too. But you have to have all your ducks in a row. And I never knew it was so complicated until I started doing it, because once you go looking for a building, like I see there's no sprinklers on your ceiling now, you got to make sure there's sprinklers and fire alarms and as soon as you say high school, even though you're only looking to serve 20 kids, you have to meet a lot of stringent requirements that might not be there doing something else.
Wow. So you get right directly into that right out the gate. So there's a lot of then tricky bits about which way for people to go if they are looking at starting one. You mentioned yours would fall under the umbrella of private. At the same time, though, you're not a tuition based. You said you're not going to charge them.
Right, but we could be, and we as a board we had researched that a little bit. But one of the counties said they wouldn't let us talk at the table if we were charging, and so we decided not to charge, and that'll probably change next year because. I see. Yeah, because it's just not. I mean, because right now, it's just not well how we're doing it. And then we should, if we can get all our ducks in a row. There's a lot of money coming down from the opioid settlement that should be able to flow to recovery high school too. So.
Oh, great! Is that? Yeah, I think that's always a balance. With I've been recording a couple episodes with people who are. Practice building experts, something more of interest to clinicians and things like how do you build up your own practice and provide services. And one of the big challenges in that sector of the therapy industry is always like you take most therapists, grab 100 therapists off the street, and don't do that. It's probably a crime. Anyway, you take them all to one location and ask them what their values are. And most of them are, they want to help people, right? That's why they do this. Right. And then at the same time, if they're in a business for themselves, they got to pay for that, and people have to pay for that. And so how do you, and they're, anyway, just talking about how people structure.
You have to have somebody answer the phone and somebody to keep the books and to do all that.
Exactly.
And they have to pay as well. Right.
My best solution is just do that all poorly. That's what I do. I just do it all very badly, and that way it's not as expensive. No, but, but it's always the struggle when it comes to treatment, is to say, how do we, get somebody in the door? Now you're adding on to that, like here's the educational piece and also this kind of for kids. And there's always that, how do we control that access to care and cost? And because you're not starting because there are, and nothing against whatever, but there are treatment programs, private treatment programs that are really, really, boy, I mean, you got to take out a big like finance
Right.
treatment
Sure,
options.
sure. Yeah,
And
$40,000 loan for a little stay.
right.
Sure.
I mean, you've got that kind
And
of
then,
bar of treatment,
and then, because I can't even imagine being that parent that you've taken out the second mortgage and put your kid through treatment and then got to bring them home to put them back in the high school they were going to before, where the problem started at.
Well, I
You know?
mean, right, exactly. Just the accessibility to this, and one of the goals I know of the recovery high school model, right, is you're wanting to get more kids who can come in and benefit from this. So I guess anyway, you got to balance out. How do we? It's nice to know you got to say, is there community funding? Is there other things? Is there like tuition, and how do we keep that under control? There's a lot. How do you approach those kinds of decisions?
There's a lot of parts, right? Yeah, there's a lot of parts, and we're learning. I mean, it's most all the schools are learning as we go. The one in Jacksonville was the most successful here because we have 3 in the state of Florida. There's only like 50 in the United States, by the way.
Okay,
and they've been around since the early '80s, the late '70s. Started out in Minnesota.
Wow.
But so the one in Jacksonville has been the most successful one, and they have money coming right from the city, and that's why whenever our executive director decided to step down, I made the decision to try to pull us back into my hometown here, and then push for some, really get vocal and push for support right here, so we're not spread out over everywhere like we've been.
Hmm. That's interesting. Trying to tie it into the local, because you could go either way with this, right? Like I could see where with online, theoretically, it doesn't matter where the kid's from, but then it's like, but then you're going more into this great vast kind of, but to go big in a more local way and saying there's need everywhere. Yeah, that's an interesting decision. How are you?
Well, how's that going? Because like even with the opioid funding, because I was at the opioid meeting here for our county yesterday.
Yeah.
Even if you tap into that, you can't use them like if we use Osceola dollars that are coming in here, the way I understand it, you can't use them to serve Orange County population.
So when you're getting into being able to use funding that's going to be useful and I hear what you're saying. Yeah, you got to go by, you treat it like, well, let's put it this way. If you're trying to make a school, a lot of the things you've said kind of lend themselves to, if you're going to make a school, you're trying to actually make it run like and function like a school, whether it's getting the sprinklers and getting the certified teachers, or getting funding that is not totally going to go away next year here and there, and actually have an infrastructure around it.
And once, like, if you get into the opioid monies right now, that's supposed to be like 10 year reoccurring once you're into the system too. And there are some other things like that too. But and if you're able to use the scholarship dollars too, once you get set up with a certified teacher and all that, you can have that be your reoccurring sustainable funding as well.
Tell me a little bit about, for people who aren't familiar with that, when you're talking about opioid money, you were talking about settlements, and maybe tell people a little bit about what that is.
Well, if you haven't been around and it's amazing me how many people don't actually know how the opioid epidemic started was with OxyContin coming out. And if you would have watched like the chart, it was like this for overdoses of heroin, and opioids. Then when OxyContin come on the market, and I don't know how prevalent pill mills were everywhere else, but we had a huge amount of pill mills here in Florida, and the spike went like that to now fentanyls come on the market as well to feed that fuel, and so there were like 110,000 people that died from opioid overdoses last year, but to back that up, OxyContin was kind of like the start of that, and they marketed it really well to all the doctors to push it out as not being addictive. And I might be speaking a little bit out of turn with that, but the opioid epidemic was kind of started by the pharmaceutical industry, and so there's, I don't know how many billions of dollars or $1 billion funneling back down in reparations to the counties that had harm.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's good to have that be a resource. And I guess, spoiler to anyone who's not following the story too quickly, Yes, addictive. Um, right. I mean, obviously. And then, of course, with the fentanyl addition to the crisis lately and deaths going up and things, that's where this is
Crazy.
becoming so much more prevalent. And it is always going back to where you said there's only 50 of these types of programs in the U.S. specifically. Going back to the 80s, it's something you'd hope that we would get on this. I wanted to give you a chance to tell people a little bit about what are some of the differences. So we're saying, I mean, and we're talking about it here. It's already in my mind. Yeah, it's a great thing. It's good. When a young person goes into a recovery high school, what are some of the important differences about that between, that and their regular high school that they don't get?
Well, the important differences would be is one that they know what they're signing up for. They're signing up for to practice some sort of wellness program on a regular basis. And so what that would look like for us is you would have you would check in every morning when you come in, have do a what I'm grateful for kind of thing, and have a little chit chat about how your night was, and then it becomes like a one-on-one thing, and so you have a connection, and so we're very connected with our kids, and we have regular and random drug testing that they say that they agree to, and then at the end of the day, we have a group every day, whether that looked like an NA group, whether it looked like an AA group, or whatever it is. We don't demand on which recovery program they participate in, but we give soft touches to pretty much all the different recovery programs and invite other people in to come in and speak with us. And then sometimes we'll just do music, whatever the kids like too, because we do different kind of music interactions because they all have their songs and what makes them feel better and all that. And we have talks about that, and we have money mindset Mondays where we talk a little bit about being able to be financially responsible and what it might look like to have a bank account and all that kind of stuff. And so we do a lot of different things that they don't do in regular public schools, and especially big on the recovery, and then big on the one-on-one conversations with the kids, on a regular basis too.
I like how you mentioned that there's it sounds like diversity of options for the way that they're engaging with recovery, sobriety, health. You started by calling it wellness, which I think is really, I always feel like that's a good sign if someone hits wellness first, because I think at least in modern trends of treatment is more focused on what do I do after I stop using instead of how do I stop using. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Well, and truth be told, whenever my early years in sobriety, I wasn't about harm reduction, and now I'm about harm reduction or whatever. With everybody, so many people dying, and I've lost close people to me. I'm about whatever keeps you alive until we can hold your hand and love on you long enough until you want to be weller than you were before.
And that's a great point too. That's where I'm at too. I'm a harm reduction guy. If we're going to use the funny thing to me is harm reduction was introduced to me after I was, starting to work as a therapist, and I thought, well, that just actually matches therapy, which is you meet someone where they're at, you try to help them be healthy, you listen to them when they tell you what their goals are, and
that's what we do with the kids too, because we make them very personally involved in their everyday wellness as well, and what's your academic goal for the day, and try to hold you accountable to that.
Yeah, and you're talking about that, especially at this kind of local level. I'm thinking about the benefits. Would you see this as something that would be beneficial to have? I don't know, each district have one, each county, or
I think,
what do you think?
To me, every, if you're talking about a 20 person, every little hub, because we like Osceola County has two main cities. So I think, to me, you would have at least one in our city and one in the sister city next door, one in Lake Nona, because it's everywhere, and whenever you talk to people involved in the school system, they say, yeah, that's needed, but it's harder to pull off than, some of it really hurt me whenever I got out there advocating, because we're anonymous people, we don't get out in front of people so much, right? But whenever you get out there trying to advocate for people with substance use disorder, people look at them like trash. They're getting what they deserve, kind of thing, and they'll donate to puppies. They'll donate to puppies, but they won't donate for people.
Yeah.
And
How much we do pay for and how much that we do spend money on it, I think shows where those values tend to be a lot of times. When the kids are involved in this, do they participate with extracurriculars with kind of their home school, the school to which they would be going? Does this take just their
we try to
academics?
promote that, but
both?
that's easier said than done, because a lot of our kids are usually school bruised too. They have reasons why they're not going around to school, so there's a lot of dynamics to it, a lot of healing to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And our greatest wish is not to hold them hostage either. Hopefully, a couple of our kids will be going back to the regular schools next year.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. I know when I worked with kids who were in behavioral self-contained units in schools, and then I also worked with some campuses where there were residential youth, and they had a school there that had some kids coming. That was technically a day treatment mental health program, but they had a school in it because if you're a teenager and you're going to be in this building for all that time, part of your treatment is educational in nature. You got to be learning stuff, or else because that's another way we're setting a kid up to be educationally delayed. If it's like you need all this kind of treatment because you got all these problems, addiction, mental health problems, and
then we stop them from going to school and they're 2 years behind, right? Yeah.
Yes. And when I've worked in programs that had inpatient care, for example, if someone's in inpatient psychiatric care for 30, 60, 90, 120 days as a teen, that puts them significantly behind. And I've never really been at a place that was primarily a treatment facility that kept you caught up with your schooling. And I'll be fair, I don't know that they can, because that's not the main point. The main point is you're here because you can't function, in your day-to-day life.
Especially when you're in that really, really broken phase too, right?
Exactly.
Right. Sure.
And so that's where I see one of the strengths of these programs. You're talking about being primarily a school with a recovery. So the education is just as important as the treatment aspect or recovery aspect, it seems like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you structure that with that as you're building up, and you guys are building up to having the full-time, teacher, the full certified teachers and things? How do you keep the education where it's supposed to be?
Well, because it is online, you can do it different ways, and then there's also the expectations where depending on how far behind they are, that they can tap into it in the evenings and then there are other times as well. But with that being said, if they are really, really struggling emotionally too, you don't want to push on them so hard that they become even more bruised by what we're doing too. So we've learned that too, and a lot of times we're easy, we're easy, but we're consistently trying to push them along.
It all comes back to really relationship and rapport. That's a huge part of any community.
And I found that to be absolutely true, because I know some of the students that really, really like me, it's much easier to engage them and challenge them to step up a little more than they were before. And if they're not, then it's just almost impossible.
Yeah. I like the term you use, school bruised. And I would say treatment bruised is probably another one that I've seen in
church
my industry.
bruised. There's all kinds of ways to get bruised. Recovery, because sometimes people go into the recovery rooms and get their bruises from there too. But one of the things that whenever I talked about the Tampa school, what Tina's doing over there right now is she's also got enough funding to have graduated students come back in and act as mentors for the younger ones too. And so I just so love what she's doing, that she's able to do over there. So I think that'd be a critical part too, is if you're gonna keep growing, is to have the students that you've had success with kind of like sponsor or be involved with the kids that are coming in new, and that way you create your own kind of recovery community.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, there's a little bit of survival through the first parts of whether nonprofit community building, treatment program building. I've seen this where you survive these like early days long enough to say, boy, is there anybody in this group? Is there anyone in this class?
Right.
But if we can like muster through to where
does anybody care? Because
you get, and then you get like a core couple of people who hang in there, and those become the ones that then, there's no better, I say marketing or gathering, recruiting, whatever you want to say, right? There's no better version of that than someone who's like, yeah, this helped me and I want to stick around and help. I want to turn to the person next to me and say, this helped me, this will help you. And this helped my kid, this helped my neighbor, this helped my whoever. And that's what, so you guys are really in that phase now, right? Where you're kind of like, we're building these core people that are going to be our people, and they're going to hang around.
And I was going to say something, but one of the kids that I really, really like is about to graduate, and we got some great plans for his graduation. And I think that he would be like a great advocate, because he's just an outspoken kid. And I mean, and because it just really bothers me that the world looked on the substance use disorder, the addict, the alcoholic as trash, because some of these kids are just so smart and have so much wisdom already.
You mentioned before that you, at the beginning when we talked here, that what this might have meant to you, you had some kind of program or schooling option like this when you were younger. I'm curious how, as you've been working with him and with people in your program, these students, how do you feel towards that when you think about what it could have done for you?
I feel great to be doing it. I feel sometimes still sad because of where the addiction took me to the institution, to the DUIs, the jail, and all the stuff that it took me to before I could find the right person, the right connection, the right help before I could get sober. Yeah. Because I really thought that I was just mentally ill, incapable of getting sober, because drugs and alcohol was my way of dealing with life, because life, it was just too hard. I was emotionally incapable of dealing with life on life's terms. And because every time that I stopped, I was worse. I was violent. I was, all the things when you have a person who's, like that. So,
yeah. And the difference it makes to have a sense of community at a young age too. It's funny when I meet people who have had some of these types of opportunities when they're younger, who will identify as like, oh, I've been in this mode of sobriety, I've been in this mode of wellness for a long time, right? You look at that, and it's funny because this is almost like a luxurious problem. People will look at that. Some people will look at it and say, well, did you really even struggle? You say, oh, I've been clean for, for decade and decade and decades. So that means you stopped when you were pretty young. Is that really even and that's
right. And because so I get people that I work with say, yo, you don't even remember what it was like. But I have reminders, because when on one of my attempts at suicide, whenever I was in the side room and smashed the side room apart, I was 3 years sober, and that guy walked into the AA room. I was like, oh no, it's him.
Well, and it's one of these things to where, think of the luxury to be able to say, my problems were so long ago that someone might even doubt them, right? That I haven't had them for so long. And to be able to say that going back to adolescence, that's what we want, right? To be able to say, do I even, have a memory of adult time where I qualified for a disorder qualification or whatever. So that's what we're looking to do. That's early intervention.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So that's great.
And then have the blessings of those generational curses broken, because none of my kids ever seen me drink. Smoking cigarettes was the hardest thing for me to quit, and my 17-year-olds don't even remember me smoking. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, excellent. What would you give as advice to anybody out there who wants to get involved? Let's say somebody's hearing this and they say, I want one of those in my town.
Generation Found, watch that movie first, and then the Association for Recovery High Schools. That's pretty much the accreditor and pretty much the model that everybody follows.
The Association for Recovery High Schools is where people want to.
Yeah, and there's a book. Where's the book at? There you go, Dwight.
Oh, there we go. Okay, yes, and that's by Andrew. Andrew
Dr.
Finch.
Finch. Yeah.
Dr. Andrew Finch starting a recovery school. We'll put that out there for everybody, and we'll put a link out there for that too.
And it's a pretty giving community. The recovery high schools. If you need help, I mean, they'll try to help you, try to lead you. I mean, we've had a lot of help on the way.
It certainly sounds like it, and I would just say anybody, if anyone out there, this is something that I like to promote things on the show that have to do with any kind of support or nonprofits or any kind of efforts to help that actually help. That's the thing, is everybody wants to. I know that in the month of May, we're actually recording this in May, but this is not coming out in May, but in May we were focusing a lot on wish lists and for domestic violence shelters, because one of the reasons people like that is because if you order some hygiene items and they're mailed to a domestic violence shelter, they're right out of the box. It's helping someone, for sure it is. And just other things that are helpful. And so this is a great example of one of those. I like to ask people to suggest charities or nonprofits when they're on, but since we are talking about yours and it is one, could you tell people where they can go to get involved or support Florida Recovery Schools? Your organization. Florida Recovery Schools
of Central Florida, because there are three different Florida Recovery Schools. There's Florida Recovery Schools of Tampa, Florida Recovery Schools, and Florida Recovery Schools of Central Florida. We are Florida Recovery Schools of Central Florida, Freedom Springs High School.
And it is Florida Recovery Schools of Central Florida.org. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, Florida Recovery Schools of Central Florida.org to find out more, to get involved. I'm going to assume that there's a way to donate or to donate time or money or something. I'm sure that people can find that on there as well, right?
Yeah, we are on Facebook too. So, and I'm always doing something to let people know what we're doing, and we're pretty active here in St. Cloud right now. So
excellent. Greg, I want to give just a quick chance for you to mention to people where they could find. You've written some books of poetry that have to do with your recovery and things as well, right?
Well, I write pretty much every day. So I'm on YouTube, Greg the Poet, and then my books are on Amazon as well. Gems from G.O.D. And if you don't know the G.O.D., Good Orderly Direction, that was one of the poems why I wanted to write the whole book, to help give people some good orderly direction and find a path to the higher power. So
great. So that would be, they look that up on, you said Greg the Poet on YouTube, or it's Greg Wooley, Wooley, if I'm not mistaken.
On Amazon. Yeah, on Amazon, yes, sir.
To find those.
Thank you, like that. That was awesome.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for listening to the Court and Parts Podcast Network. To listen to more Court and Parts shows, visit courtandarts.com.